Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Precision Rifle Media. This week's going to be a good one. I'm pretty excited to talk to Colby. We'll get into that in a minute. If you've been listening and I've been talking about shoot my match, I had to cancel my match. I didn't make it, but I did sign up for another one. So I got two matches this year. They're both at the same place. They're up by the THS Steel Challenge range. That's going to be one of the matches, and then the other one is one day match that Chris is hosting as well. So those are going to be my two matches that I'm signed up for. Excited to get out there. Not going to hopefully have to cancel this one. So um, if you're going to those matches, get a hold of me. I'll bring you something cool. So with that, I think we're going to jump right in and bring Colby in. Let Colby introduce himself. Colby Hodnett is with Accuracy First, and his dad is Todd Hodnett. Todd's been on. Colby's been on before, but without any further ado, Colby,
How's it
you're on.
going?
Good. It's good to have you back on, man.
I'm glad to be back, buddy.
All the way back from Canadian Texas.
Yeah, it's a good little town. I enjoy it.
You guys talk like Texans. You got like a southern drawl, but then you're also like, eh?
Right? I think that may be just from force of who I get to see quite frequently and stuff like that. So it kind of tends to pop in every now and then.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Colby, I mean, I think most people know Accuracy First and you and your dad, but for anybody who doesn't, you want to just give us a little rundown, man. Who are you? What do you do? What do you do with Accuracy First? What is
Yeah,
Accuracy First? We'll just kind of we'll
start with
set
there.
up and
That's
knock it
easy.
down.
So my name's Colby Hodnett. I'm an instructor and owner of Accuracy First. We do long range training for the military. We do some civilian classes as well, but with the schedule that I've got with the military, I don't teach those typically. That's ran by another instructor of ours here in Texas as well.
Is that
We
John?
focus.
Is that
What's
John
up?
still?
No, that's Pete Gould.
Oh, Pete Gould.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
the name. That's Gould. That's what I was thinking. Yep.
Yep.
Sorry.
So Pete runs our classes out of Austin and Clarendon, Texas, for the civilian stuff, and then we're mainly here with military in Canadian Texas. Um, as far as Accuracy First goes, what is Accuracy First? I think that was a question you asked. That's an interesting question that I don't know that I've been asked before. Accuracy First is a long range shooting school where we focus on use of ballistic solvers and things like that to optimize capability and maximize effectiveness in a limited scenario or restrained scenario. So a lot of the training we do focuses on pulling away from ballistic solvers, even though, yeah, they are by far the best tool that we've got for capability. And we're not advocating nearly against them whatsoever, but learning how to use them to fully optimize capability. A lot of the times, what I'll see, I'll take guys out and we'll shoot around a course of fire, and I'll let them use every tool that they've got, right, to come in and shoot. And we'll look at kind of hit probability through that course of fire. And then from there, I'll start taking away different tools to force them to stay alive and stay active in their environment, in their scenario. And this is obviously after I've given them some formulas and different tools to be able to come up with those solutions on their own. And I don't push anything outside of those capabilities. But then we'll look at from there hit probabilities when you take a kestrel away, when you take different tools that should be there to aid in increased accuracy and increased capability. And a lot of times, what you'll find is that people will end up with very similar hit probabilities, if not better hit probabilities, once you start taking those tools away. And it's not because those tools are ineffective. It's not because those tools don't help, because they truly do. What it highlights is the fact that we're using the tools wrong, right? There should be a way of utilizing these tools that we've got at our disposal that are there to aid in capability and maximize effectiveness, given whatever scenario you find yourself in such a way that you really truly do, right? In such a way that you actually do increase hit probabilities and capabilities. And we go through that. We go through a lot of different things as well, like all the formulas that we own. We teach obviously on the trimmer reticles and the horse reticles and things like that. So it's a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different types of shooting, but really the whole goal is with the course is to teach knowledge of what matters and when it matters, right? Knowledge of what matters and when it matters is what allows you to maximize effectiveness, maximize capability when time is a constraint, when resources are limited, so that you can, at the end of the day, achieve that end goal. And the end goal is to put a round on target.
Yeah. Do you think that with all the new technology that's out there, all the solvers, all the everything, do you think when you're saying like what matters when, do you think there's people that, like they overthink it? Do you think that's a problem that?
I I do. I think people overthink it. I think mainly what happens is people become a drone, they zone out on this really dynamic and changing environment that's going on around them. And by the time they're able to input all these parameters, by the time they're able to manage every single variable, they're not doing it in such a way that's active to an active environment. And they come in and they take this screenshot, this capture effectively of what's going on at this moment. And then it takes them 5 minutes to input everything. And then from there, they try to shoot the solution that was for 5 minutes ago, not right now. And so it's a way of managing those tools in such a way that it maximizes accuracy, maximizes effectiveness.
So speaking of that, I mean, you're probably specifically talking about wind more than anything when you're talking about 5 minutes ago versus right now.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
Um, yeah. Do you think that's where like a lot of this bracketing stuff comes to play, right? Is to kind of help mitigate the problems with the one wind variable, and because you get the kestrel and you can get wind one, wind two, right? And generally what I see people do is they'll take like if you got, let's just say, a 7 to 10 mile an hour wind, 7 to 12, whatever it is, they'll have wind one at 7, wind two at 12, and then they'll kind of shoot, on a high or a low, they'll pick one or kind of hit the middle, you know.
Yep. Yeah, I see that a lot. And so that really is though where bracketing becomes highly effective is when you've got these variable wins. And then doing that on as well with winds that are variable, not just in speed, but also in direction, being able to manage that. But a lot of the times, what I'll see is guys will come in and input like a real small bracket, because that's what it's doing at that point in time, or they'll input the bracket, but then they'll try to wait for that one wind speed that is up at the top, or for wind speed one or wind speed two, or they'll shoot for an average. And the problem with shooting for the average is you're just only ever going to see average results. And so it's non-beneficial to come in and use that average. Bracketing is a lot more effective, and a lot more beneficial. And wind dots really make it easy to bracket, because now we're talking in winds, and wind speeds, and not in mils. We're not having to do any extra math and things like that. But it allows you to immediately see that bracket across the target.
Sure.
Um, but
Can you hit on
that
what's a wind dot?
so wind dots are a tool that was developed that Dad came up with for the trimmer reticles and things like that. Basically, they're time of flight wind deflection dots, and so they they're placed in the reticle, and in reality, they are not anything other than just mil dots. They're mil dots that are equally subtended left and right, but they're not equally subtended as you go down. And so, what it allows me to do is to come in and find what the wind dot value is for my gun at this DA, so on and so forth, and then from there start talking in wind speeds. So I can come in and make a call in wind speed, and now I don't have to convert to anything. I can just use that wind speed call as a hold. So effectively, we've done all the math on the front end, so you don't have to do it on the back end. And there's a lot of benefit to the wind dots themselves in learning it, for one, and from there, like competitive shooting and a lot of other hunting and applications. They're massive,
So
but
just
they go for it.
I'm a little slow, so I just want to make sure I'm tracking. You got a dot in your reticle, right? In the tremor reticle. For anybody listening, look it up. I'll put a reticle in the show notes or whatever. But the tremor reticle is kind of weird, right? If you're used to having all straight lines in your
Yes.
scope, and most people are used to straight lines, I think, in their scopes. So they got like kind of a up and a down on, for bullet spin, spin drift, don't they? They kind isn't that kind of part of the up and the down?
No, so no, they're pretty much straight going. They aren't straight going across. There is nothing secondary that's added into the wind dot
Oh,
calculation because of the variability with different guns and things like that. So
what
um, different twist rates and different amounts of DA or bullet length or bullet weight, bullet diameter, all those that are correlating into spin drift and or AJ or aerodynamic jump, which is that vertical component of crosswind, would vary. And so the wind dots are a pure wind dot value. And so
I
it is
thought
something.
I thought that the tremor was the one that was it the subtensions were all like kind of at an angle. Which reticle is that then?
I don't know. It's not any one that I would. It would have to be a ballistic reticle that is matched to a weapon system, because you're going to see different amounts of AJ or aerodynamic jump and spin drift given variation in density altitude and twist rate. So you would have to match that to your mainly predominantly twist rate would be the main function. So it would have to be done to that gun, to see a reticle that is accurate that could accommodate for all of that.
Yeah, I remember. I remember there were some guys pushing them pretty hard a little while back.
Maybe it may have been before my time. I'm not aware. So
Oh,
the
okay.
the wind dots are not ballistic. They're
Yep.
not matched to any weapon system. You calibrate them to whatever gun you're on at your
Yep.
DA, everything like that, and it is a strict wind speed value. So if I
Okay.
think the wind's blowing, let's say my wind dots come out to a nice, even, perfect 4 mile an hour, then, and I think the wind's blowing 4 mile an hour, I would just hold the first dot going all the way out. If I think it's blowing 12 mile an hour, I would hold the third wind dot going all the way out. So now when you start getting multiple targets on like the same cosine path, I don't have to do any more calculation for a further target or anything like that. It is 12 mile an hour, so that's what I think I need to hold, and I'm going to hold that, right? And
Cool.
so it just allows you to immediately transfer into a wind speed value. From there, you do have to apply, if you have any aerodynamic jump, into the elevation hold. If you have any spin drift, then you would have to correct from spin or for spin drift off of that hold. But they are purely wind speed values that work for any gun, any caliber, any DA. They are not ballistic at all, and that's why I get back to they are really just mil dots because they are.
Sure.
And really, the whole thing with them is they're a time of flight based wind deflection dots based per mil of drop. And so we come in and use that to come in and figure out what your hold should be given a certain mile an hour, and then from there you calibrate that mile an hour on your gun.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So I'm gonna have to look up what reticle that is. I can picture the reticle in my head, but it's got like it drops on the left and it raises on the right.
Don't remember. It
And
could
it
be
was
a tub reticle.
that's yes, that
Yeah,
sounds right.
it could be one of Tubbs reticles. I don't know that for sure though.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think he was pushing it hard. Either way, I'm wrong. But the the tremor reticle, yeah, I looked it up quick. I know I shouldn't do
So,
that, but while we're recording, but no, I
so
looked it up, and it's kind of like a the Horus reticles, but like better.
it is exactly the horse reticles. So the Trimmer 3 is the H59, but with wind dots. And so Dad designed both H58, 59, the trimmer reticles, things like that. And then so he had came up with the H58 and then the H59, and those are the gridded mill reticles for horse. And then from there, at the time when he was pushing the reticles, everybody his main feedback, everybody was still running the like mill dot reticles and these really basic reticles. So everything he was ever told was, "Oh, it's too busy. It's too busy. It's too busy." And so there was nothing, any other feedback other than that, right? Just a straight gridded reticle, the H58. He came up with the H59 around that same time. And then from there, he wanted to make a reticle that was cleaner, right? Less ink in it to accommodate for the people who talked about it being too busy, but also give more capability. And that's where the Trimmer 2 came from. So the Trimmer 2 and the Trimmer 1 are effectively identical. The Trimmer 1 was made for 1 to 8s. And at one point in time, there was very, very few ever sold. And immediately we made the Trimmer 2. And that is, the board that I teach people how to shoot the Trimmer 2 on is a photo of the Trimmer 1. And so if that tells you they're the exact same, it's just some of the things in like designing the reticle that make sense in a 1 to 8 don't make sense in a high power scope now. And so you can't really run this LPVO style reticle in a higher power. So we had to change some of the line thicknesses and all this other stuff, and to make it work out well. And so we did that, and that became the trimmer 2. It is honestly the exact same
Sure.
scope, I'm sorry, same reticle. And then from there, um, once he came out with the trimmer 2, which is kind of the relevant reticle for the scopes we're talking about today, um, the everybody had gotten used to their 58 or 59, and so when he came up with it, everybody went, well, we kind of like our 59s now, and we get why you were pushing them. So then he came up with the trimmer 3, which is just the 59 but with wind dots, because the wind dots were the first inception of them was in the trimmer 1 and 2, which again, same time, same reticle, just one's basically LPVO, one's high power. And then so he came up with that for the trimmer 3 for the high power scopes, and off we ran, and everybody adopted them immediately because the wind dots are so incredibly beneficial. And with it, having it in the trimmer 3 doesn't force you to just run wind dots, because you still have that gridded mill reticle that you can do anything you want with, right? Just because they're there doesn't mean that you're forced to use them or anything like that. And so you can still work in mills, you can still do anything and everything you want. Um, and that's the neat part with the wind dots, is it allows for total versatility, but it also provides really good training capability, because when I fire and I see where that round impacts, I can see that, hey, I called it at 12, so I should be holding the third wind dot, assuming they're 4 mile an hour each. I saw it hit on the fourth wind dot though, so now I know it's 16 mile an hour. So now you start to become highly familiar with the wind speed call itself, because at the end of the day, I see so many times people get really highly familiar with their weapon system at the ranges that they're training on, at the target ranges that are placed out, and which is not bad at all. That's a really good thing. But what they familiarize themselves with and become intimate with is the end result on target once they make a wind call. And so they'll come in and go, all right, that was 1.6 mils right. And now tomorrow when they come out, they're like, oh, that's what that felt like. Hey, hold 1.6 right. And they'll hold and they'll shoot. And they'll become really familiar, because the familiarization is done to the end result and not to the thing that translates to every weapon system, which is wind speed. Wind speed, at the end of the day, if you can get familiar with that call, that, hey, that's 8 or that's 12 or that's 14 mile an hour, now no matter what gun I'm using or what DA I'm at or anything like that, it translates to every weapon system, because 12 mile an hour is 12 mile an hour. And wind dots really help and aid in that learning process and the application of that call itself. And that's what makes them so cool, is that they do translate to everything, and it pushes this familiarization of a wind call being a wind call. And so
Yeah, it
every
wasn't. It
oh,
wasn't
go
all
for it.
that long ago that what would you hold for wind? 1.5. You know,
It
and
tells
and
me
it,
nothing.
it and it went from being that, oh, I held 1.5 to I held 10 miles an hour.
Yep.
Where people started talking, and they're holding for 10 miles an hour. They're not telling you how much they actually held.
Yeah. And dad used to always say that he could tell the experience level of a shooter by how he answered that question of, hey, what did you hold for that shot? And instead of saying 1.6 right, they'd say 12 mile an hour, because they know that I don't know anything about your gun. And if you tell me 1.6 mils right, that means nothing to me, because I don't know what's your muzzle velocity, what bullet are you running, right? Tell me all the things about that, and let me come back in and calculate back now what the wind speed is for your system. Instead, just tell me what the wind speed is, because that's what I can utilize for my shot.
Yeah.
And so it is, and it's pushing that emphasis of make a call in wind speed. However, so I'm a big believer in you should be able to make a wind call in everything, right? In mil dots, in minutes, in Kentucky windage, inches off the right edge, right? Wind dots, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But at the beginning of the day, or at the end of the day as well, um, every wind call starts with a wind speed call. That's 12, that's 16, that's 24, whatever it is. And then from there, I have to convert to a hold, right? I need to convert that into a mill hold. And so how do I go about doing that? Well, with wind dots, it just pushing the wind dots, it just makes it easy, because I don't have to convert anymore. My hold is my hold. It's 12 mile an hour. It's whatever wind speed I think it is. So hold that.
So let's. I got a little touch here, and then we'll move on.
Yep.
The wind dots. So like, what? Pick your favorite gun. What's your favorite gun right now?
Oh gosh. My favorite gun right now is probably my little proof 7 mil 300 Norma that I've got. So
Okay.
I made a lightweight mountain rifle version of it.
Nice. So
It's cool.
what is it? So let's just say what is one wind dot on that rifle?
One wind dot on that gun is probably going to be about 6 to 6.5 mile an hour.
So when you're looking and you got 6.5, you hold one wind dot, right? If it's 12 miles an hour, you hold two wind dots.
Yep.
If it's 18 miles an hour, you hold three wind dots.
Exactly. And
Boom.
what's nice about them is they don't change much because they are time of flight wind deflection dots. So if you're looking at a photo of them, here's a good kind of example. So a 300 Win Mag running a 190 grain Sierra Match King has a G7BC of 0.276. On average, I'm running those at about 3,000 foot per second here at this DA of whatever it is, 4,500, call it today, right? If I come in and calibrate the wind up value for that, it's going to end up being around 4.3, 4.4 mile an hour wind up value. If I take now my 308 gas gun, right? And so that 308 gas gun's running about 2550, 2600 foot per second with 175 grain Sierra Match King, right? G7BC on that's 0.243, same DA. I come in and calibrate both wind dots and I end up with really close to 4 mile an hour for each one. And so a lot of the times people had issues with this because it didn't change much, right? Everybody grew up on quick wind. They understood that formula. And when you do each quick wind, 308's 4 mile an hour, 300 Win Mag's going to be about 6 mile an hour. And so, cool, makes sense. Better gun, better ballistics, bigger number. I can track that even if I don't understand the quick wind formula. Problem came about was when you did the wind dot value for both guns, they both ended up being right at 4 mile an hour as well. And so it was really hard to understand how it couldn't be ballistic, right? How it could not be made just for one gun if I'm getting these two wildly variable weapon systems that end up with practically the same wind dot value. And so what I like to use this example in class because it really kind of lends itself towards a better understanding of what the wind dots do and how they work. So if you're looking at it, you can see those wind dots grow as you go further down in the reticle, right? The separation between the two dots. And so let's take a shot at 700 meters with this 308 to start, right? And let's hold, let's call it 8 mile an hour, right? So if you're taking a shot at 700 meters with this 308, you're going to be holding really close to about 7 mils of elevation hold. And if it's 8 mile an hour, I'm going to hold the second wind dot. And if you look on the 7 mil line at the second wind dot, that should be really close to about 1.4 mils away from the vertical stadia. So really in reality, all I'm holding is 1.4 mils because at the end of the day, there's a final answer to this shot. And that final answer requires that I hold so much of an angle up and so much of an angle over. So the final answer, the units are always in mils or minutes or whatever angular measurement you're using, right? Wind dot's just aid in this. And so I'm going to hold though 1.4 mils right for this wind call, right? It's the second wind dot, but it's 1.4. So now you come in and you take this 300 Win Mag. Well, the problem is at 700 meters, I don't have to hold 7 mils of elevation. I'm holding like 4 to 4.5. And so now I'll hold the second wind dot, but that's only like 1 mil away because you can see that they grow as they get further out. And so, yes, the better ballistics are represented in this gun because I don't have to hold as much elevation and the wind dots aren't as far spaced apart up close as you as opposed to like lower down in the reticle. So you are representing this better wind call, even though the wind dots are the same value. It's because you don't have to hold as much elevation. That's why they work, and that's what makes them so unbelievably cool in my mind.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Now I'm gonna have to go get a new scope. I always just looked at the new reticles. And I'm like, I don't need all that. I got it all, whatever I got in my. I don't even remember. That's how little I've been shooting lately. I don't remember what reticle I have. Actually, I got rid of my H59 reticle. I just have the Night Force, whatever their regular.
The Mill XT, I think.
Yeah, yep, that's
Yep.
the
Yeah,
one.
that's basically a 59. It's just a different pattern.
Yeah, no,
If you look at the
that's what I had. Now I just have the regular, just a regular like mill reticle.
Okay, yep,
Yeah, I had the 7 to 35, but I sold that a little bit ago.
yep. Why?
So what's that?
Why?
Oh, I bought some equipment.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I bought some
Yep.
equipment and some tooling, and I had to get rid of. I had to pick one, and it wasn't the one that I wanted to get rid of, but it wasn't the one that I had beat the hell out of.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep. Yeah,
like
I get that. Yeah.
yeah, because like on my rifle, like I don't shoot it as much as what I used to, but it's all beat up from being used. I mean,
Yeah.
and when I was looking at selling them, it's like, well, I can sell this one for half of what it's worth because it's all scratched and dented and dinged, and like the parallax knob, there's a part of it you can't read because it's been bashed into a barricade and stuff. Like, but the other one, the 7 to 35, that one hadn't even been mounted yet.
Yeah.
So it was like
Better return on that.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly.
I get it.
It was a bummer, but it was choices you make.
Yep. I do. Very much
Um,
so. So
but
that's the way I
I'm gonna have
oh,
to
go for it.
pick up some new jobs with that equipment and pay for a new scope.
Yeah.
What
Go did
scopes
you
you
get a
running?
lathe or parts for the lathe or something? Or a
Yeah,
mill?
yeah. I bought a lathe and a mill. It's
Nice.
been a couple years now, but I bought a lathe, a mill, and a TIG welder.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've tried the TIG weld, man, and I am just not good at it. I can get it by, but once we start getting to aluminum or anything like that, I am wildly out. I'm just gonna
Yeah,
immediately burn through it all, and go from there. But yeah, no, that's cool. I've got a lathe and mill, and I absolutely love messing with it and playing with it and just making stuff.
yeah, right.
Breaking bits really is kind of what it ends up being.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got a big piece of brass. It's probably 3 inches,
Yeah.
diameter and probably 4 feet long. It's an old prop shaft out of a boat,
Oh,
but
that's cool.
I'm gonna build one of those offset candle holder things. Have you seen that?
Offset.
You take your 3-jaw, you take a 3-jaw chuck and you pull one of the jaws out, run it in so that the part turns offset,
Yep.
and then you mark every so far on your part, and then you make your cuts, your like with a part off tool, and then
Mm,
you go in so far every time, and then take it out and rotate it to your next. You have it,
yeah.
and then you end
You
up
can
with
do
like
that with a 4 jaw pretty easy, and offset it in the 4 jaw, and then run a dial indicator and measure how much runout you're getting. So you could do an offset. Because I did this with a gun barrel the other day. It was playing around. It was a bad barrel. It's the only reason I did this. But I was trying to see because dialing it in is always takes a bit, right? And
mhm,
practice and getting everything set up. And so what I thought was, well, if I can come in and dial this in offset, I can dial it in the middle. And so let me try to offset this turn. So I'd come in, offset it by whatever the offset was, run it on the lathe, and then from there, bring it out another inch and offset it in another direction so it looks like a camshaft as it's spinning, right,
yep,
with different lobes and everything like that. And then, so that was the goal, was just learning, and now it looks wild. I haven't
yeah,
tried it yet. I'm a little nervous too, but it was just a test to see if I could actually
do
get
it.
everything dialed in well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the same kind of a thing. With the 3-jaw, it's a little less precise, but it'd be like a little quicker maybe. And it's just like a little candle holder, so like who cares how perfect it is? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
But that's one thing that I want to do. I don't know. I just think it'll be cool. But
That's cool.
yeah, I built chamber up rifles and stuff, and whatever. But yeah, so that's where that scope went. What are you guys running for scopes these days?
We've got mainly all the not force scopes, so running a lot of 7 to 35s, 5 to 25s, all the attacker lines. Got some 4 to 16s and all that good stuff. So just running a bunch of different scopes, playing with the midline scope. Got a couple of the Horus Vision scopes as far as a kind of midline as well. The NX8s have ran a few from Night Force on the 2.5 to 20 and 4 to 32. It's
Oh, they've
actually
been holding up.
they've been holding up really well, man. Like
I've been hearing mixed reviews.
well. Really?
Hmm.
So what were the because I haven't seen anything negative just yet. We don't have them all in our schoolhouse, so a lot of the times we'll run like 20 scopes and we can find problems relatively quickly with all the guns. But I because they're on my personal rifles, they're not just getting
Beat all the heck.
beat all day long. Yeah. So with that, I'm probably not going to run into as many issues as I would as fast, at least, as I would if they were properly thrown in the school. But I haven't had any. What were the problems?
Supposedly, I don't have one. This is all third hand, but because when they first came out, they were super popular for like the NRL hunter class stuff, right?
Yeah.
Keep weights down. But I guess they were having trouble with like holding zeros and stuff.
Mm, that's wild.
But I mean, it's a night force, so like if it's really not holding zero, I imagine they would take care of you, right? And
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I'm sure.
but
I can't imagine that they wouldn't. So or I
I
know
was
they
just
would.
curious if you had heard, if you'd seen anything or whatever. That was, that was
No, no, I haven't. On any of my guns. Granted, I've got my 4 to 32 sitting on my proof little 7 300 Norma. It's a lightweight mount rifle. Thing weighs 8.5 pounds without the scope. And then from there, I've got the 2.5 to 20 on a 5.5 pound, 6 pound 300 Win Mag single shot break open Merkel.
oh nice.
And that is wicked cool.
Yeah, that is.
And those are the 7 300 is not that high recoiling because I've got a good break on the end of it. So it's not super high recoiling. Um, it hits about like a 300 Win Mag, so it's not too bad. Like a 300 Win Mag that's been suppressed or it's got a decent break on it. And then the 300 Win Mag that I've got the 2.5 to 20 on, that one's very high recoiling. It's a very lightweight gun, and it will kick
Mm,
pretty hard. But that's the whole point, right? Is a super lightweight single shot 300 Win Mag made for hiking up incredibly steep terrain, and I'm not looking to shoot this thing a whole lot. So
right. Yeah, one or two shots at whatever it is you're trying to kill, and you're done.
yeah,
Whatever.
hopefully one.
Shoot your deer. Yeah, right, right. Shoot your, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it's quite cool.
So
I
you might get a kick out of this. The first, so I grew up in northern Wisconsin, so it was always like in the brush and the trees.
Yep.
Like I never shot a deer past like 40 yards until I was like 28 ish, I suppose, 29 maybe. No, not that old. But I had moved out to South Dakota, right, where it's wide open. Never shot a deer with a rifle, even just shotguns, pistols, and bow and arrows, right?
Yep.
And I moved out here. I shot a deer. This is like a 350-yard shot. I was shooting a lot at the time, so I was pretty tuned in. And so I shoot this deer. It's like 350 yards. It was a standing shot because I was just in like, like waist high grass. So I shoot, and I come back, and I just see this big puff of white hair. So I thought, oh, son of a gun, that was low. And I'm watching this deer run away. It's running and it's running and it's running. I was like, I could shoot. I should probably shoot again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so used to just like you shoot and there's trees and you're kind of done.
Yeah.
So I jack another shell and I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna try again.
That's funny.
By then it had been too. It was too late. I didn't get another shot off, but it did put a good hit. Double lunged it. I did put a good hit on, but
Oh, good. There you go.
yeah, it ran just like kind of the way. Well, you got rolling hills down there too, right? Like
Mhm.
it's weird. Like you think you can see forever, and then you start walking and you realize how much you can't see.
Yes. Yep.
So like this deer took off running, made it about 80, 90 yards, I suppose, and fell over. But it run just far enough out of my sight that I'm like, well, here we go. Yeah, I'm watching it run, and it was
That's
like,
funny.
and like I said, it only ran like 80, 90 yards, but it really wasn't very long, but it just felt like forever that I was watching
It
this deer
does.
because
Yeah.
I'm so used to being in the woods and stuff, that it was just like I'm watching this deer. I did the same thing with a coyote. I shot at a coyote and it was running, and I was like, huh, guess I'll try again.
I've got time. Yeah, that was a big change coming from East Texas, where we used to live, up here to the Panhandle, and having it's a completely different type of hunting, right? Especially bow hunting. Bow hunting is so much more difficult in this terrain because you have to be familiar with like capability of shooting quite far. I mean, you may not get presented with much shots inside of 60 when you're in the flat country up here. Or if you've got cap rocks, you can really put a good stalk on it, and that makes it a lot of fun. And then
Yeah.
you can really come in and get relatively close. Still 40, inside of 40 would be incredibly difficult just because there's nothing for cover. And in East Texas, where it was really wooded, I mean, you had a lot of cover, so you were able to move and really do some like slow stalks,
Hmm.
and just walk for. I remember going out and just hunting, and I'd hunt for hours and just barely move. I've got into long range bow hunting recently. So that's what I've been pushing and playing with. So I've got shot a deer the other day at well, I say the other day. The other day can be within the past 5 years. So I shot one at 72, 78, one of the two yards, and then I shot a deer at 100 yards um, the other day as well. That
Dang.
was 2 years ago. Practiced for forever for it, and really got it dialed in. Really just knew I was in every time, and it's a lot different style of hunting.
Hmm.
At that range, it's more long range. It's kind of like long range rifle hunting. It's completely different setup. You're really pushing longer times to get set up, and the one thing I didn't realize when I was shooting targets at 100, getting ready for this shot, was how long it actually took the arrow to get there. Because when you're shooting targets, it's just, yep, that's what it is. And then you get out to and take a shot on a deer, and you really realize how long it takes for that arrow to get there. And you're just praying, please
Well,
don't move, stay
yeah,
there, stay there. And you feel like you have the entire world um, going
yeah,
on around you. Yeah, and just moving. So it's cool. I enjoy it. Bow
yeah,
hunting is something I absolutely love, man.
yeah, yeah. When
So
you start shooting a bow, they'll jump the string at 20 yards. You know, I
yep,
mean, so then you start shooting real far, and
yeah, it's cool.
you got even more time to get out of the way.
Yeah, but all right. So sorry to derail you off onto bow hunting and everything like that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So, um, let's just, we got a little time here. If somebody's looking to take a class, what do you think is the most important thing to look for in the class they're going to take?
So important bits to look for in a long range class or just any class. One is the instructor. So a lot of the times, a really good instructor is, and this is not just in long range shooting, it can be in pistol or anything like that, but is someone who's willing to adapt to you. So someone who is able to come in and look at how you learn and what is best suited to your learning style, your capability, and then flexing around that instead of having a set POI that this is what we're going to talk about, then we're going to move to this, and then we're going to talk about this. And there's no adjustment or change to suit the student. It is just strict. We've got to go to here next, right? And so not being able to flex, that's something to look for with instructors, and that'll really it's the mark of a good instructor is someone who's able to come in and really flex that POI based off of weather, based off of the student and what they're looking for in the class and all that kind of stuff. Um, Something that as far as topics being taught goes to look for is wind. Wind is the biggest non-deterministic variable that we face in shooting, and so being able to understand wind and read winds and what to look for, and knowledge of what's the most common errors and how to mitigate those, and that's something that's massive. I remember in college I used to sit when I'd come home for a weekend or something like that, I would sit and I would read um, chapters or whatever. I would do this even at school. And when I got to the end of the page or when I got to a point that was a good break, I would stop and I'd try to guess what the wind speed was doing at that moment. And then from there, I'd read it because you don't want to just guess and then not check, because if you do
Hmm.
that, then your brain's going to go, yeah, I was probably right, even though you were 5 to 10 mile an hour off. And then you're going to start solidifying that feel as whatever number it was that you guess, which could be miles off. So always
Yeah,
making sure if you're going to do that to check it
have a way
is
to check it.
yeah.
I did that a bunch when I was shooting a lot, and I was working on a job up in northern Minnesota. And every so often, I'd pull up to a new piece of equipment to work on or whatever, and I'd get out. First thing I'd do, I'd get out my truck and I'd guess the wind, and I'd hold my Kestrel up
Yep.
and
It's great training, man, because you start to familiarize yourself with the wind, and you're really able to shoot in that and understand what is important. So one of the things I'll do is I'll teach guys reading winds very similarly to how we teach like people how to mill a target. So if I'm gonna have you mill a target to guess or to measure distance, from there or to understand the size of the target, so on and so forth. How do you normally go about teaching someone to mill a target? You'd come in and I'd tell you what the target should mill to begin with, right? I know how far he is. I know the size of the target, or I know how far the coyote is, whatever you're doing. And then you mill it. And then from there, if you're off, I tell you no, the target should mill this big. And then you re-mill the width or the height or whatever it is that we're milling. And then you sit there and you play around with how you look at it and where you place it in your scope, and you learn what to focus on. What are the important bits that you need to look out for? If the sun's really just shining straight on the target, maybe I need to back out power so it's not glowing as much or it's not as bright. Um, all these different tricks and things that you need to learn are learned organically doing it this way, because you know what you need to make happen. And then from there, you work backwards to, all right, how can I make myself see that? And then from there, we move to the next target and do the same thing. And you kind of learn and you take those bits and pieces away. And you, okay, I remember this time I had to do this. And if I did this, I couldn't see it. But if I did this, I could. And so you start with those and you go, oh, wait, okay, I'm only a tenth off now. And then from there, you find some more tricks. And then you learn what's important and what carries through, because now as we start milling different targets, I have you mill it first. And we kind of progress into now you're just milling the target, but you learn what bits of information are consistent across every time I'm going to try to mill a target. What's important, what's not, what's red herrings, what do I like look out for that could give me a bad reading, all this different stuff, because you start with the answer and you work backwards.
Mm-hmm.
You can do the same thing in a wind call, right? You start with the answer and you work your way back. So it's going to take that first shot, but once I make that first shot, wherever I see that round impact, that's the answer. It tells me everything that I need to know 2 seconds ago to put that round in the center of the target. So let's walk back from there, right? What do I need to look for downrange? What kind of terrain features are influencing this wind call? Wind at my location versus wind throughout the flight path, right? What about cosines? Where are they really coming from? I called it at this angle, but it was really this angle. All this other stuff that people like I get asked that question a lot. What's the most important wind in a wind call? In reality, all of the wind matters, right, throughout the entire flight path. But from shooter's perspective, the only known I have is wind at my location. So while that's going to be the best start point, you start from a known, you don't end there. You grow into the unknown, right? But I use terrain at my location. I use terrain through the flight path to dictate how much emphasis I place on that downrange guess, because that's all it is at the end of the day. And so if I'm in the panhandle outside of these cap rocks that we're in here, the canyon area that we're in, if you get onto the flats, like in, I don't know, Kansas or somewhere, right, where it's just incredibly flat, and I'm standing in a cut cornfield, there's probably not a whole lot that's going to affect the flight of that wind throughout the entire flight path of that bullet. So I'm not going to place a lot of emphasis. But if I'm in a canyon, yeah, there's a lot going on, right? So understanding what to look for, what bits of information to prioritize, you can do that if you take a shot, see where it impacts, and then work your way back to the start, right? And that's a really good way of doing it. Knowledge of the number one issue in a wind call being bad cosine, that is massive, man. That is the number one problem I see with wind calls is bad cosines, bad directionality. I'll watch guys take 10 minutes to get a wind speed call and then go 130. Well, if that 130 is it really 130? If it's 1 o'clock, well, that's 25% error now. And so prioritizing the cosines and learning how to read them and input them properly or do them on your own is massive. And so that's something
Yeah.
to take away as well.
I remember the first time I was shooting in the mountains, and the wind would come from behind us and it would go up the mountains. And so your drop would change.
Yeah, that's going to take a real kind of specific setup, but it can if you've got headwinds and tailwinds that are flowing up that mountain, because a lot of the times you'll see cosine effects added too. So you need to be aware if you're shooting across a valley or something like that, depending on the slope, that you could have the cosine of that head or tailwind if you're shooting across it. So there's a lot going on there, but there's a lot that's just headwinds and tailwinds that could be an effect as well, right? How much is actually pushing up on my bullet versus it just being a straight up tailwind. And so it does happen. It's just a very specific kind of scenario to look out for. Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, it got me. It's not
Yeah, it will. It will.
I was
Definitely.
expecting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Flatlander out here,
I understand. A big issue in the mountains that I run into with the guys is cant.
Oh yeah.
canning their weapon systems. And so, I mean, there's been times in the mountains where I would have swore I was at least close to level and my bubble was pegged off to the side. And so it's just the perception of what is level in mountainous terrain is wildly off,
Yeah.
just typically. So, being able to make sure you get good, like, well, can't and make sure you're level, so on and so forth, is
Yep.
wildly important as well.
So I know you kind of talk about getting away from some of modern, um, the modern stuff, right? You're kind of trying to do it old school, I guess would maybe be the way to put it, right? Not old school, that's not the right way to put it, but not relying on all the fancy whiz bang electronics, right? And that's kind of
Well, it's not necessarily that either. So to that would be a good point to clarify. It's not that at all because it's really understanding capability with the time that you have, right? If I have a coyote pop up on a hill 200 meters out, and I try to stop and plug in direction of fire and update my environmentals and plug in all the winds and do all this stuff, by the time I come out of that kestrel, he's long gone.
okay. I
I
got a
can,
story for you now.
yeah, go for it.
I was hunting with my cousin. We were doing a coyote contest, and it was like the first time I'd ever really been out west coyote hunting, right?
Yep.
And so this coyote comes out, sits on a ridge, and I'm telling you right now, I had enough time to range it, get my kestrel out, input everything into my kestrel, get a number, dial the number in, build a platform, and shoot, and I still missed.
Well,
When I pulled my rifle out of the truck, I spun the windage dial 8/10 of a mil because I pulled it out of the truck and it caught the seat of the truck. Right.
yeah.
So I remember that. I remember this like it was yesterday. Right. Because that's never happening again. Right. Until the next time it happens. And
Yep.
I remember it wanted me to hold 8/10, and I had 8/10 dialed, and I don't usually dial wind. So
Right.
so I held my 8/10, and then it was dialed 8/10. So
Yeah, yeah, that will definitely get you, man. But that's really what it's about is knowledge of, like, how do I maximize effectiveness with this scenario that I find myself in. Let the scenario dictate the methodology, right? When the scenario dictates the methodology that you employ, then at that point you're going to be as effective as possible in the scenario that you find yourself in. Because too many times we get so caught up and so wrapped around the axle on certain inputs and everything into the kestrel that we lose sight of the end goal. And the end goal is to put around on target. That doesn't mean if that coyote's broadside that I'm cool rocking one into the hip and watching him run off. Target doesn't have to be the entire thing you're presented with. It could be the vital region, heart and lung, or it can be just the heart, right? Define that region of the target where a hit is a hit and shoot for all of that, right? So if I'm looking for a heart shot on this coyote, if it takes me 5 seconds or 30 seconds and I just impact different part of the heart, what did all that extra time do for me? Right. But on top of that, it's not just that we're trying to get away from wasting time or we're trying to employ rapid engagement style techniques. It is when that coyote is not going to present me with enough time to account for everything. How can I manage the stuff that matters most, right? So where you're prioritizing the stuff that matters most and you're disregarding things that don't when time is a constraint, when I don't have time to stop and plug everything in, right?
sure.
And so how do you achieve the end goal at the end of the day? So that's really what it is. It's not getting away from the use of technology. It's not at all. It's not getting away from anything like that. The goal is let each shot be scenario based. Let the methodology be scenario based, and ensure that no matter what scenario you find yourself in, that the way you're managing those tools is such that it is increasing capability, right? Because if I can stop and plug everything in, I should be max effective at this point right here, right now, right? If I can plug everything into the Kestrel, if I can plug everything into whatever solver I'm using and take all the time in the world, that should be my highest hit probability, right? In that scenario where I've got like 10 minutes to come in and plug everything in. It's so when I take a minute and I don't plug everything in, why is it that I'm seeing the same hit probability? It's because I'm using that tool wrong, right? And so a lot of what it comes down to really is just guys lose that essay on their surroundings, that you're in a really dynamic environment that's always changing, being winds and things like that. And so it they typically lose sight of that. They lose sight of that constantly changing environment, that they drop SA because now they're just plugging everything in, and then they come out and they go, well, this is what it says to hold, I'm going to use it. Things could have been completely different now. And
Sure.
so that's what the whole goal is with these courses. And so it's knowledge of what matters and when it matters, and how to come in and prioritize properly, and really let the scenario set the methodology.
Sure.
Um, but that's the goal with all of it, right?
Sure.
Um, so yeah.
Cool. So with that being said, what are you guys using to create your firing solutions?
The Kestrel. So applied ballistics, really, because applied ballistics is the solver that's in the Kestrel. The Kestrel is just the way we access that solver, which is phenomenal because I've got to have a way of coming in and getting environmental conditions and wind speed and all this good stuff. And the Kestrel is perfect for it because it's a handheld weather station. And
Yep.
so that is by far the best tool that we've got that's encompassing, all encompassing. You can get other tools that you add on bits and pieces here and there, but this is one solid unit.
Yep.
And then from there, there's a bunch of other stuff that's out there nowadays, like the Garmin watches with AB in it, and really it's just everything nowadays is allowing us to come in and implement all this stuff into whatever tool you're using that has AB, whether it's a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder or a phone app with whatever solver you're running of your choice, right?
So with your Kestrel or anything, are you finding that it's pretty spot on right away? Just put in good numbers and it's good, or are you doing anything to true stuff up or distance, or
Yeah,
how's that?
definitely. So, truing, what it's doing is, in a perfect world, realistically, in a perfect world, we shouldn't have to true our guns. All these inputs that we come in and micromanage and really try to resolve to a finer degree, whether it's our muzzle velocity BC, uh, whatever, all these inputs, bore height, twist rate, all this stuff that we're implementing into these solvers, that at the end of the day is to give me a better initial prediction, right? An initial prediction of where my round should impact. Um, Sometimes due to non-deterministic variables, and they are inherently maybe potentially deterministic, meaning I could come in and actually measure them. If I had an incredibly expensive Doppler radar sitting next to me or whatever it is, there are ways of measuring these variables that are unknown to me at the time. But to me, at the time of taking the shot or on the range, there are potentially non-deterministic variables, and truing accounts for that. Truing comes in and says, hey, at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is, does my bullet impact where the Kestrel or the solver that I'm using says.
So when you're truing, what are you changing?
So I change muzzle velocity. So in the AB solver, the we choose to change and adjust the muzzle velocity of the round, instead of BC.
What?
So
Why is that?
that's a great question. That's going to take me a little bit to actually fully properly walk through, because this is a really good question that everybody's asking right now. But to answer it in a very succinct way, let's look at it from an outside observer's perspective, right? And let's pick, either one is going to end up doing well, right? At the end of the day, the best solvers in the world will give you the exact same holds. They should. If they don't, then it's not a very good solver. So every solver should end up giving you the same final holds, no matter what you're running, because all we're trying to do is predict where the round's going to hit. That's it, right? So with that, um, I'm running AB. I like AB. I like the AB solver. I like the ecosystem that it provides. And I like the AB solver for a lot of different reasons. But beyond that, I'm using it right now. We can get into it. It would increase the length of this conversation by a much larger amount. But I like the AB solver. Not to say that the Hornady solver is bad by any stretch. It's just that's the one I'm using.
Right.
So with that, from an outside perspective, having no say in the way AB dictates the methodology of truing in their core solver. Right now, to properly change BC, or to change or to true my BC, I would have to come in, and then from there, I would have to run a G1 or G7 drag curve. instead of a custom drag model. Well, the G1, G7 drag curve is inherently less predictive than that custom drag model because the variability of that coefficient of drag around the flat profile of the brown that I'm using is going to be a lot more variable comparing it to a G1 or a G7 than it is to my round, right? Because there's still going to be variability bullet to bullet, lot to lot, right? From whatever it is I'm shooting to the standard that the drag curve was, the CDM that was provided, right? And if you're really worried about that, then go get a PDM, shoot through the Doppler radar, and have one that's made up exactly for yours on the app, and everything's fine. But beyond that, we come in and to true BCs in the AB model, I have to come in and revert from a CDM back to G1, G7. And that is going to be inherently less predictive. So I choose to stay in the CDM world, which is inherently more accurate, and then true my muzzle velocity based off that.
Sure.
Right. There's a lot of other reasons that we can get into that I would recommend, just for the sake of time, that you go, who's ever is listening, go listen to what Brian has to say about it, because we don't have a lot of time to get into everything right now.
Yeah, that could be a whole show.
It really could be a whole show, and that's that. I'm trying to. I feel like I'm jumping around right now, but I'm trying to pick and choose what I want to say, so that I can at least lead into it, and then that maybe it'll make more sense next time we do a podcast, or if somebody goes and finds Brian and listens to what he has to say about it. But beyond that, the whole goal is to make the model match reality. That's it. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to chew our guns, but we don't live in that perfect world, right? So I have to have some way of coming in and making that model match reality. And truing is the way we've done it. Dad came up with truing like 20 years ago, and the process of, and we used muzzle velocity back then, and we still use muzzle velocity. We've gone back and talked about it, and there's quite a few different reasons as to why we choose to still use muzzle velocity. But again, that would be better suited for Brian to talk about, given the length of time we have right now.
Yeah. No problem.
But it is to say, again, at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is match reality.
Yep.
And all you're trying to do is come in and ensure that where you're truing at, so this is really key, where you're truing at, that you have proper resolution of the center of your cone of fire. Because I see so many times guys are trying to true way too close. Whether you're true in muzzle velocity or BC, it doesn't matter, right? Don't true too close, because from there, if you do, you're going to lose resolution on the measurement of whatever it is you're trying to refine, right? BC or muzzle velocity, and then you're going to end up with greater errors at distance, right? So make sure, no matter muzzle velocity or BC, you're truing within that 10% range of Mach 1.2. Right, 10% inside of, so 90 to 100% of whatever Mach 1.2 is. 308 is going to be about 800 meters or so. Again, that varies. I'm not going to put a range to it because it is strictly based off of Mach 1.2, whatever that range may be.
Which is different wherever you are too. That temperature, density, altitude, everything makes a difference when you start talking that stuff. So you can't really say where it's going to be.
Exactly. So
okay, so. Your dad did back in the day the art of the precision rifle.
Yeah, he did.
yeah, he did.
I think I was in that too.
Hell yeah, he did. Are you gonna? It sounds like it's like less of an art and more of a science now.
There's still an art.
Are you gonna come out with another one called like the science of precision?
That would be cool.
The precision rifle.
It's still an art to me, right? And so it's balancing that art and the precision of it, and being able to come in and really play both worlds, right? Because you can refine it, and I think the science and the precision comes down from the production of the core and how we measure all these different variables and refine capability in that prediction, and then the art comes in at the shot. Right, being able to manage the wind call, being able to bracket properly,
that's what I was
understanding cosine, all this stuff. Right, it's a balance of art and science, and I love that balance.
I think the science end is like in the manufacturing of the gun, right? Building the gun and the ballistic solvers, and I think the art comes into the form of using it and the wind reading of it. Right, that's kind of where I would draw the lines if I had to draw the lines. Right.
Yep, I agree completely. Because and from there, you can force it to be a science if all you ever do is come in and measure and plug in, and then there's no extended kind of capability past that, right? If all I'm ever doing is just stopping and plugging everything into my solver, that's not really an art at that point, right?
Mm,
But that's also not max effective, right? How
right.
do you maximize effectiveness in different scenarios?
Yeah.
That's where the art comes in.
I think you should get on that. Start making another video. Get
I
another
think
one
it'd be
out.
pretty cool.
That'd be
Yeah,
cool. Super cool.
it would be really cool. Might have to do that.
I'll be in touch.
Yeah, yeah,
We'll set it
definitely.
up.
I'll let you know whenever we start working on it, or whenever I get it done. At least it may take years.
Yeah, right. Awesome. So, Colby, I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people go with questions, comments, or concerns?
So you can email me at Colby at Accuracy First, and that's with the numeral one ST. I've tried to buy the FRST domain, but somebody's bought it and not wanting to sell it. They bought it years ago and have just held on to it. So numeral one ST is where we're at, accuracyfirst.com. And then from there, yeah, just shoot me an email. Happy to respond to anybody with any questions, anything like that. And yeah, that's it.
Boom. And then accuracy, what is it? Accuracyfirst.com.
Yeah, just accuracyfirst.com.
That's one, accuracy one ST.
One ST.
Boom. Cool, man. Like I said, I really appreciate you taking time to come on and talk with us. It was super interesting.
Yeah, I had a blast, man. I really did. Thanks for having me on. I would love to come back and do it anytime. Really appreciate everything y'all do and the podcast y'all put out. So they're always
Awesome.
good.
Thanks.
Fun to listen to.
Yeah. You were like, hey, you got any talking points? I was like, oh, we don't need those.
No, normally I remember last time it just kind of ran on, and yeah, so it's real easy for me to jump in and just carry and keep talking for hours, and so I have to pace myself, especially in these hour-long podcasts, because it's so easy to go way past it just in one topic. So
Right. Right.
I've
Well,
tried to do that better, especially on this one.
yeah,
So
you guys are so you break everything down so much, right? That every little topic has a ton of information to cover,
yeah, there's
right?
so many different rabbit holes,
Exactly. So
and
that,
I love the
that
rabbit holes.
the one rabbit hole can take you just an hour to explain the one thing, when sometimes an hour just isn't enough. I did a show with your dad one time. I think it was a couple 3 hours long almost,
Yeah, it'd be easy
if
to
I
do.
remember right. It wasn't.
Yeah,
It was way back when I first started my old show and everything. If I remember right, I'll have to go back and look. I think it was him. I think it was him. We did like a 2.5, 3 hour show.
really.
Yeah,
Jeez.
if
Yeah,
I
that'd be.
remember right.
I believe it, man. That's 2.5, 3 hours is very easy to get through. I know sometimes in classes, I'll look down and we'll be 3 hours past where I last looked at my watch and thinking, I don't know where time
Yeah,
went. That was so
yeah,
fast. I've still got a lot to cover. Jeez.
yeah,
But it's cool. I love it, man. I love teaching. I love the art that's in teaching, and I really do. I think it's a blast. It's so much fun to get out and shoot,
yeah,
and really see that passion kick on for people because it's such a passion for me, and I
yeah,
love it so much. I love every minute of this stuff, and so getting people to see the beauty in that, and then getting people to see and then getting to see the joy that people find in it is really cool.
yeah.
And then getting to go do it myself, which is always that's you can't beat that, right?
Yeah, well,
So
it's like, what do they say? It's like the different levels of being into stuff, right? Is like, when you first get into it, like all you want to do is do it, right? Like, it's like, what was it, like fishing or duck hunting or whatever, right? Like all you want to do is numbers. You want to shoot a ton of ducks. You want to shoot
yeah.
a ton of deer. You want to shoot a ton of, you just want big numbers. And then it moves from there to like um big ones, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for specific ducks. You're looking for specific ways of shooting the ducks. You're looking for specific deer, right? And then it goes to like where it's more about like the people that you're with, right?
Yep.
Then it turns into like being more with the people, and then from there it turns into teaching people, right? Like those are like the four steps, if I remember right. I think those are like the four steps of like, they say like with the hunting and all that stuff. It it gets to the point where you don't even care if you catch fish. You want that guy to catch the fish now. Like
Yep. No, it's very accurate, actually. The more I think about that, the more accurate it is. And I agree, right? You still love it. I still love it and still go out and shoot and truly love every minute while we're out there.
But you could hit that target at 1,000 yards every time you try. But this guy who's never done it before, like you're like, yeah, you go do it. I want you, and then you're more excited for that almost. That's how it is.
It is, but there's still that learning, right, process, right? Because I don't teach because I think I've got all the knowledge or that I
Oh
have the
no, and
capability of instilling.
that's not what I'm
It's
saying at all. I just mean you get more excited. Like you're more excited when that guy hits it than you are
yeah,
when you hit it. That's what I'm
100%.
trying to say. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
it's
I
not.
agree, and I think a lot of that comes from like you see the excitement and the joy in people that you have had and that you have, and I love seeing that, right, and watching that and watching people get excited about like this the stupid crap that I'm into, right, and then just that way I've got more people to talk to about it, right, and I really enjoy that, and then
Yeah,
from there it's this there's so much to learn, there is so much we still have to understand and to learn and to progress. It is the more I've learned in like shooting in any kind of format, the more I've realized that I need to learn more
hmm
about this thing because you realize I don't really know much at all. One door opens three
right,
doors,
right.
and it's just this nonstop thing, and I love that. I love coming in and learning because most of the time in the classroom, I learn more in the classroom about how well I understand something or a different way to look at something than I would on my own. And
Right.
so it helps me to learn. So that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. So, man, that's our time. I really appreciate you coming on. We'll be in touch. We'll set something else up down the road and maybe find some rabbit holes to go down
I
and
look forward to that.
get a little deeper, get a little
Block off
more
maybe
insight.
3 hours and we'll go for there.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Bust out the bourbon.
There you go. I like that one.
So
That'd be good.
cool, man. All right. I really appreciate you coming on. So that's Accuracy First, everybody, accuracyfirst.com, Colby at accuracyfirst.com. So with that, everybody, I really appreciate you listening. Questions, comments, concerns, go to precisionriflemedia.com, click on the contact us section, and then that'll shoot me an email. Or Kirk at precisionriflemedia.com. Or if you want like real answers real fast, go Elise, ELYSE at precisionriflemedia.com. She's kind of in charge of everything. I just get to talk to people. So with that, that's all I got this week, guys. So take care. Try to get to the range. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.